Hi, everyone, and welcome to the official episode 1 of the Foreign Comics Calling podcast. Delighted to be here with I want to call them my 3 foreign amigos, 3 guys from the US. Introduce yourself, guys, in any order you want to. Go for it.
Matt Roybal here, aka Define 999. Really looking forward to it, guys.
Yep, and Stephen Bagley here, aka Bago Fleas, and I'm definitely looking forward to doing this. This is going to be fun.
Right on, yeah. And Eric Miller here as well. I need to get a handle. You guys got some cool handles. I feel unprepared, but I will say this: it's fun having. Yeah, it is fun having Ken introduce us because he has that cool accent, and it comes.
Oh, thanks, man.
Whatever he says is going to come off with authority because of it, right? Which is great. I love it.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, Matt, can I just bring something up before we probably get into our speaking with our audience? You know, for years,
of course, my mate.
I always thought you as Define 999, and I know now that I've been doing it wrong all those years. It's Define 999.
Oh well, either way, however you want to do it, it's an old moniker.
I love it. I have no idea what it means, but I love it.
Cool.
Catch me after a few THC gummies, and we'll get into it.
Okay.
Cool.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know if you guys want me to jump in and sort of lead. We have a very loose structure on this one, and we're going to be finding our footing on these first few. So bear with us. The one thing I wanted to say as a slight disclaimer, at least for me personally, I don't want to speak for you guys, but forgive me in advance for butchering any foreign languages or foreign words as we go forward, because I'm sure to do that. I don't know if you guys have the same thing. I'll do my best.
I'm sure I'll be doing it some too, so don't feel bad.
Right.
Me too. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
me as well.
Yeah. So forgive us in advance for we will do our best in terms of pronunciations and whatnot. We're always open for corrections as well too, of course.
And apologies to those people from those actual countries that we're about to butcher.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's all
We
from
are
a place
so
of
sorry.
love, of course. Right. A bit, first thing, just the name of this podcast, right? So, Ken, you came up with the name. You want to explain that? What inspired the name?
Well, it's a kind of triple fold thing, really. Matt and me, we've got extremely close ties to, foreign comic collectors. So you got FCC right there. So I kind of wanted to stick with something similar, but not the same. So I thought foreign comics calling, that can be applied in another couple of ways, as in the foreign comics media, it's calling to us. It's wanting us to discover it. So I thought, well, yeah, that's quite a cool angle to think of it. And then I thought of, okay, it's still a podcast. We're calling out to you. So it's comics calling to us, and we're just the medium. Mm-hmm. We're just pushing out there for everyone. So, yeah, we're all foreign comics calling.
Right on. Love it.
I like it.
Yep, me too.
Love it.
I had some ridiculous names, but I'll dig those up for a future episode.
Great. Want to hear those. It's the FCC podcast, but it has nothing to do with the Federal Communications Commission.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So cool. So one of the things.
Unfortunate acronym.
Indeed.
Right. Well, we'll override there. We'll take. It'll become more synonymous with us than them because we'll be so successful. Right. That's the way I see it. So we put a note out on the Facebook page. So we have a new Facebook page. Please go find us there. And we were seeking some listener questions. I pulled a few of those, and I thought that would be a good way to kick off at least this episode, but probably our episodes going forward. Maybe start off with a listener question. We'll probably go with more than one on this one because we got some great ones. So if you guys are in agreement with that, let me throw out a question.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Shoot.
So from Matthew Gabriel Truchel, and forgive me, Matthew, if I pronounce your name wrong. He threw in a bunch of great questions. I don't know, maybe I'll just pick one or two of these, just so we're not kind of blowing our wad all at once. But this is a good kind of personal question. What was the first non-English or foreign language, not your home language, book that you ever bought, and why? Let's start with Stephen. What was the first non-English or foreign language book that you ever bought?
I found a Spanish edition, forum publisher edition of Amazing Spider-Man 300 at a show, and it just I had just been kind of getting into foreign comics, or at least starting to look into them and maybe think about trying to find some. And I happened to be at a show, and I saw this Spanish edition, and my buddy Tim Bildhauser was at the show with me actually, and we I brought him over and said, "Hey, what is this?" Because at the time, he was the guy who I knew who had most of the knowledge. I was like, "What is this?" He's like, "Oh, that's the Spanish edition," and I liked it. I love Amazing Spider-Man 300 anyway. And the guy had it for a price, and Tim was like, "You can talk him down some from that." So I proceeded to do so, and I got it, and I really liked it. It's great. It looks a whole lot better than what it ultimately graded out as for me. For those who don't know, I am into the grading side of the hobby primarily. I collect as well, but I'm big into getting books signed, getting books graded, all that stuff. Which I did do with that book. I actually got Todd McFarlane signed on it, and I got David Michelini signed on it, and got it graded and done up and everything. So that was a thrill. That was my first real experience of actually buying a foreign and getting it in my hands and doing something with it. So
Cool. Let me add
What a great one too.
yeah.
Absolutely. And let me ask. I'm going to add to Matt's question a little bit. Matthew's question. So I'm going to call this 1B. So that was your first book you got, and that's awesome.
Mhm.
But what made it? So your first book might have been a kind of a curio. I'm not going to say that. I don't want to speak for you, but what was the jump between having one that was kind of a curio, if that's fair to use, and to like, hey, I'm going to collect foreign comics now?
For me, it kind of just sparked off a whole new thing, because I knew I hadn't really gone into seeing what all was out there. I had just kind of been talking with my buddy about it, and he had just been pointing some things out and telling me, this is out there and that's out there and that's out there. I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. But I hadn't really, I hadn't gone online and researched and looked for stuff yet. I was busy with other things, and then I just happened to go to the show, and then I just saw this one. And when I saw it, it was almost like a light bulb went off, because I'm like, I've been hearing little things about this and that, but I hadn't really looked into it. And yet here's this book staring me in the face right here at a show, physically in my face. And it's like, oh, and it's almost like it became real at that point for me. It's like there really is other things out there. There really is this other whole world out there of comic collecting, and it's not that I was getting tired of anything in the American market, because I wasn't, but it was just almost like someone said, oh, and behind door number 2,
Right.
and door number 2, it's like, hello, a whole new world, and it just, that I wouldn't say that it, I'd say that's probably the point right there at which I was like, I want to look more into this. I really do want to start researching and looking more and finding certain books and issues and storylines and certain characters and whatever, and what all the different countries are out there for them and everything. So that's kind of what sparked it for me.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. So let's go back.
It was fate, Stephen.
Yeah.
Fate.
What?
Follow your fate. Follow your fate.
Follow your fate.
Friend.
And for those of you out there who were wondering or do not know, the Spanish edition of Amazing Spider-Man 300 is actually a Golden Age size book.
Oh, wow.
No, I didn't
It's
know
the
that.
same sizing as an American Golden Age size book.
So you had to go CGC.
I had to go. No, it is CBCS. CBCS is Golden Age size. So anything of Golden Age size, they can do. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thankfully, it wasn't bigger than that. If it was like magazine size, that would have been an issue. With that, I would have had to go through CGC, but yeah, it was Golden Age size, so it's kind of neat to see it next to a regular American, because it's a little bigger,
Yeah, it's
Comics
a little
Forum.
taller.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. I do want to ask about best options for foreign grading, so let's put a pin in that. So back to Matthew's question, and let's pose it to Matt now. So what was the first non-English or foreign language book you ever bought, and why?
Greek Spidey 252, and the why was I was just looking for a 252, and I was on eBay and I came across this Greek book, and it looked awesome, and I won it for like $2 or $3. I don't even remember. And it arrived, and it was small. And I think I've told this story before, so I'll try to do the Cliff Notes version. But it arrived. I researched it, found nothing, went to the CGC boards and found who I consider the two founders of this niche are, Hector and Liam. And then from there, so the answer would be basically it was the Greek 252 was the first book, and the why did I start following that path, was really seeing these two other collectors and this passion that they had for this book, yet no one else gave a shit. And so that intrigued me, and boom, that was it, man. I was on the road.
Cool. So that kind of answers that additional question I tacked on, the how to leap from the curio to the collecting it. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it was the passion of two collectors.
Right.
You know, Stephen, as I'm sure anyone that's run into Tim Bildhauser knows, you want to talk foreigns with that guy, he will do it, and you'll see this passion and this knowledge that then rubs off on you as it's rubbed off. I mean, Tim has probably gotten so many people into this niche. So Steve and I connect with your story. I totally understand it, because, you know, and that's what happened to me too. Running into those two guys, their passion just made me go, holy shit, look at this world. Yeah, door number 2, I'm in it. So,
and by the way, Liam, when you mentioned Liam, is that Liam Sturgis?
yes, Light
okay.
9000.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so that's
Liam we're amazing guy.
He's in Canada.
Yeah, both.
Yeah, he's a Canadian.
Yeah,
cool. So we're 2 for 2 on episodes and mentioning this Tim Bildhauser. I've never heard that name before, so I'll repeat once again. We need to get him on as a guest, right? So
we do.
For sure,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think just in general. So there's kind of one of the things that I have in mind, and feel free to shoot me down, guys. But you know, I'm as the newbie, I'm trying to somewhat be a guide through. You know, anyone new coming to this might sort of be behind the questions I'm asking. Like that's what I'm trying to represent. So, you know, if you're mentioning it, if you're name dropping, I don't know the names you're necessarily name dropping. So, you know, let's think a little bit in terms of like 101, new collectors, new listeners coming to this. Right?
Yes, makes perfect sense.
So cool. So moving on, Ken, that question to you: what was the first non-English or foreign language book that you bought?
Seriously or non-seriously? Non-seriously would have to be when I was in Germany for a little short holiday, buying a copy of Fantastischen Wir, just because I loved superheroes, but I was bored, didn't understand a thing about it. And then cut forward many, many years, and I bought a little bundle of Avengers West Coast Avengers comics. And in tucked amongst that little lot I bought was an Italian Avengers West Coast Avengers comic. And it was the one with the original Human Torch busting out of the grave.
Right.
Such a fantastic. I thought, wow, what? So what is this? This wasn't done in. And don't forget, I didn't order this comic from this eBay buyer. He just sent it in as a little. Here, what do you think of this sort of thing? Feel free to have it, etc. And I thought, well, wow, the cover's brilliant, but it's on a Captain America book with a West Coast Avengers West Coast story inside, and utilizing the cover. So the initial craziness of it all chucked into one issue and branded Capitan America. It was like, what is this? I've got to find out more. And that's just what I did. I just ordered a few more caps, American caps off the same buyer. I said, what else have you got? Italian Captain America wise. And he just, this is what I've got. So I bought a few more. And then it just escalated. And it was like the light bulb is, well, Italy can't be the only country doing this. What else is out there? And then in came the Greeks, in came the French Canadians, and then the Germans proper. And then this whole monster has just enveloped my life. I'm trying to get free, but the sickness won't let me.
It's taken over Ken's comic collecting soul.
For sure.
And neither will we now. So, um,
Yeah.
cool. So, moving on to Matthew Gabriel's next question. Again, same sequence, starting with Steven. Tell us about the big one that got away.
Uh, Not really sure on that. I haven't really had a big one necessarily that got away. The only one that I've typically when I'm looking for books, I'm unlike Matt and Ken, I'm sure, who do a lot of their buying and through research and through people in some of these other countries and other things and stuff like that. Most of my acquisitions have been done at shows here in America, um, which limits a little bit what I can get access to. I need to get a little more into, reaching out into some of these guys who are actually in some of these other countries and seeing, what else is out, that I can maybe get my hands on. But I'd say the only thing I saw at a show that I thought long and hard about picking up and then ultimately just didn't. And now I'm kind of like, well, I probably should have. It was a foreign edition of Batman Adventures 12 with the first Harley Quinn. Um, and I can't honestly remember which foreign edition it was. I've since picked up a couple of others. I have a German edition and I have a Spanish edition, or whichever one it is, Zinco
Yeah, the Zincos.
edition.
Mm.
Yeah.
Zinco, yeah. I have the Zinco edition and I have a German edition that I've acquired since then. So now I kind of look back on that and I'm like, I kind of wish I'd pick up that other one because it was a different edition. I don't remember which one offhand.
Hmm.
But yeah, that'd be probably the closest thing to saying being something that I saw that I could have picked up and I decided to not to. And then later I was like, I wish I should have picked that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Matt, in your travels? What's the big one that got away?
The big one that got away from me would be the Mexican Avengers 1 in the Sorprendente Hombre Rana run. I had a chance. Well, it was a local American seller, and he had some beautiful Mexican books. And I had to choose. I only had so much money. I had to choose between the La Prensa Daredevil one, which is the green cover one that's really neat looking, and that Hombre Rana Avengers one within the Spidey run, the La Prensa, and he wanted 200 for each of them. Now, this is way back then when 200 for a Silver Age Mexican key was still quite a lot.
Yeah.
So at the time, and they were raw, they weren't slabs, so I decided on the Mexican Daredevil one because I liked the fact that it had a green cover instead of the white. I liked how La Prensa, and I passed on the Avengers one. And it was so nice. I think that it would probably grade, and it'd probably be within a 7.5 and an 8.5. That book would easily be a $1,000 book
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
and I left it for $200.
Hmm.
Yeah.
$200. I left it. That would be the biggie for me.
Bummer. How about you, Ken? Any tales of the big one that got away for you?
Well, to be honest, no. What I tend to do is I buy it and worry about how to pay for it later. That's the honest truth.
Man, you're sick, Ken.
I know, and I'm so ill, man. Yeah, no, nothing really. I mean, there was Sinister Tales 23, first UK Iron Man, and that was like, oh man, that's a lot of money. But I've never seen another one before, or to be fair, since. So I thought, yep, okay, let's press that button, let's do it. So I bought it and saved up a little bit. And it's true to form, I've not seen another copy since.
Wow.
So if you see it, buy it, even though you can't quite afford it. Try and do it anyway.
Yeah, that's like a fine line that everyone has
It's
to
a very
wrestle
fine
with
line. Yeah,
personally,
absolutely.
right? Like,
yeah.
What if you never see it again? Like, there's
This is
the
true.
scarcity of some of these is so.
This is true. I mean, a few years ago, there's a Mexican seller. I know his name, as Matt knows his name, but he was selling a complete run of Capitan America, La Prensa. And it was like, this is way out of my pay scale. Well, it's an adult channel. Fuck it. I'm going to do it anyway. So I came up with a deal where I was like buying piecemeal. It was really like buying like 1 or 2 books a month for about a year until I got them all. So I did it.
And it was wise because some of those early caps are tough.
Oh yeah, true. It's just
Some of those early Prenza caps are tough.
Yeah, you see, the way I go about buying things is if I see somebody selling a set, I can't pick. I can't say, well, I'll have issue 4, 12, and 17. I'll have 1 to 21. Can you help me out with the money? Some sort of thing, you know? So yeah, everybody has a fine line of how much they're willing to step up to that line or back away a little bit or just jump the hell over that line, you know. Unfortunately, I'm the latter. I tend to just like jump and get it and worry about it later.
Right.
Fully
So
appreciate.
anyone listening, if you're ever faced in that situation where you have the big one, like, you know, contact Ken. He'll be the devil on the shoulder that'll say, "Go for it."
Probably, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, you're not.
Yeah, right. No, you're not.
Do it.
Cool. Moving on with the question. So what? This is from Maria Elisa, and she asked, after the Mexican and Brazilian markets, which is the most important market to follow? And I'll just kind of open that to anybody.
That's tricky if we're talking sort of monetary terms. After Brazil and after Mexico.
That's toughy.
It is a toughie because everything's sort of spread out. I mean, I'd say Colombia, Chile is like really hard to find.
Yes.
You know,
Philippines, National Bookstore Edition.
But
exactly, yeah.
But at the same time, guys, if you're one of the reasons I think the Mexican and Brazilian markets are so high up there and are so visible is because they did so much stuff. So a content amount has a lot to do with this. Whereas like Colombia and some of the other ones, even though they're rare and those books can go for a lot of money, there's not a whole lot of content that we can find. So if you think of it in that way, I would say Australia.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
Australia had so much. I mean, they had different publishers printing the same book. You know, the Conan one would be a good example where you had both the Newton and the Jaffa. So maybe that's a way to look at it.
Within the same time frame, they would print the same title, or like years later.
Kind of. I think relatively within the same time frame, you had Newton and Jaffa all working around the same time. I think the Jaffas might be a little bit either earlier or later. I don't know exactly, but if you're talking about money spent and amount on books, there is a significantly huge Australian and New Zealand back issue market that contain non-US books. Whether you be a freak and you're going like Ernie Lasco going after every Greed Down horror you can find, or some of these guys that are trying to put together runs where they need Spidey ones and Conan ones and so they're hunting all the Newton Jaffa stuff, or if you're talking about Australian price variants that are copper aged. So, I think that's why the Mexican and Brazilian markets are so visible, is because they did so much shit, especially Brazil back in the golden age. And so Australia would come up next, I think, as far as, or maybe some of the European markets too, like Germany or Italy, that did a lot. Because there were European countries that didn't do a whole lot. I'd say the Dutch would be an example of that.
Interpress.
I mean, so I don't know. I would have to go simply because of quantity and money being spent. I'd go with Australia.
That's very good.
What do you guys think? What do you guys think?
I think that's spot on. Actually, I mean, there is one that got away from Australia that I just didn't get. Some person snapped it up before I got to it, and that is the Avengers Horwitz, which has got that gorgeous yellow background.
Oh yeah,
isn't that lovely?
Those Horowitz are amazing.
Yeah.
And like I have one particular book from Australia that I came across when I was at C2E2 in Chicago a couple of years ago. And if I will say this, and this is sort of going off topic just a little, but when it comes to these other countries, whether you're talking about Brazil or Mexico especially, Australia, anywhere, one of the things that I've kind of gotten into a little more in the last few years is romance books.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we can go into the stuff with cultural bias and trying to get things in the certain ways that people look at things and trying to get someone else to find stuff for you on those things later. But I was at C2E2, and I found the guy who had about half of a short box of foreigns, and I'm going through them, and I come across this romance book called Love Lessons, and I'm looking at it, and it's in really nice shape. I was actually very surprised because I was looking inside of it. It turns out this book was from 1953.
Oof.
It's an Australian edition from Barmore Publications, and it's got a neat cover on it. It's got like a couple in the. I'll post a picture of it on the Facebook page so everyone can see the book I'm talking about later. But it's got a couple inside of a cabin when it's winter outside. They're kissing, and this guy comes in from out in the cold, staring at him like, "Oh, you're in trouble now," one of those kind of things. Yeah, and it's a yellow background cover. But I noticed that on the right across the title, "Love Lessons," right across it is a stamp, and the stamp says "Foreign File Copy."
Ah.
That caught my eye immediately because I love date stamps. I love anything kind of stamp like that. So this turns out to be an Australian file copy with the company Barmore Publications. And the guy had it for like $20. It was in beautiful shape.
Buy.
It was in beautiful shape, and I just like, I'm not passing this one up. I think I'd be a fool to do so. In fact, not only am I not passing it up, I'm going to submit it to get graded, which I did, and it actually got an 8.5, which for any romance
foreign
book
is high.
Yeah, which for any romance book is high, let alone a foreign romance book. So that's the Australian edition that I got. And so even you're talking about, Australians being editions being plentiful or being more out there, there's more exposure to them, more of a sales market out there for them because there's more of it. That's one from even way back in the golden age, Australian edition from a publication back then. So
yeah, Australia is. I mean, their depth, their breadth of amount of foreign editions or foreign books based on American books is huge, man. Yeah. All you got to do is go to AussieReprints.com. Let me call them out and just explore. You'll find so much stuff.
Yeah, so I think the answer to that question really is, if you're talking about sheer exposure and sales market, Australia is probably right up there. But if you're talking about value, you're talking about the rarer stuff that's maybe not quite as much exposure, like the Philippine editions and things like that are much harder to find.
Yep. Or South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah. So the built into that question, there's this assumption of the Mexican and Brazilian markets being the hottest. So I may ask a bit about the why. So for my perception, is that largely because, well, I guess, Matt, you kind of talked about a little bit just the breadth of the books they put out over the years and stuff, but the non-canon stuff, the Spider-Man non-canon stuff, got a lot of mainstream press in the last 2-3 years. Is that a huge catalyst for why that market is hot, or why a lot of people are jumping into this hobby? What you think?
No, you know what? One of the reasons why I think the Mexican market in particular is so hot is because for the longest time it was stuck in Mercado Libre.
Yeah,
it was stuck there, and what's happened? Excuse me. What's happened recently is a lot of those Mexican sellers of that material had said, "What am I doing selling on Mercado here in Mexico when I can sell this same book for 4 or 5 times on American eBay?" So as American eBay, as we started to see more Mexican material come to market, because think about it, Mercado it might as well be a candy store where you don't have any money as a kid, because in so many ways it's hard for Americans to get into the Mercado auction system. They use a different payment processor. They use a competitor to PayPal. So the last thing they want is a bunch of Americans trying to use PayPal in Mercado. At least that was my understanding of it, the way it used to be a long time ago. So a long time ago, the Mexican market was sort of hard to break into. Now you're seeing these sellers, like these guys selling the non-canons recently, or the guy that Ulysses that came to the market was selling a lot of the Studio HNG books that he had. You're seeing a lot of this Mexican material show up on American eBay, where it's easy for American money to get at it, right? that's why I think the Mexican market has exploded a little bit. It's not just from the exposure of the non-canons. I think a lot of it is related to just access.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yep.
Yeah. I think the Mexican sellers, they just got wise, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right on. Cool. So let me wrap up and Matthew Gabriel sent in a few other great questions, but like I said, let's save a few of them for a subsequent episode. So let's close out with a more listener question, which is from Om Roy, and this maybe leads into a little bit of what I want to ask you guys about foreign comic collecting 101. So after this question, I want to kind of spring into that. But his question is, what makes a foreign comic valuable in U.S. collecting circles? Let's start with Steven on that one.
There's no real one thing. It really just comes down to a number of different factors, and it just depends on the collector, and the market that's out there of people who are looking for something in particular, because there's a number of different ways to collect foreign books, just like there's a number of ways to collect in any collectible that you get involved in. It could be because you're after a specific character. It could be you're after a particular storyline or a first appearance or a specific cover. There could be all kinds of different reasons why. But the foreign market in America and in the UK and some of these other countries that have been more inundated with the comic book stuff it's just, as more and more people are getting into it and realizing it's there, you're going to start seeing more demand, because it has to do with supply and demand too. And these foreign books, they just, like Ken likes to say, when you see it, you get it, because most of the time you may never see it again. And so really just the value just comes into what is it yet you're after, and how often do you see this around to be able to get your hands on it. So it really just comes down to the individual collector. But I will say that as a general rule, you're seeing foreign comics in the American marketplace go up and up and up in value. It's starting to creep up, as more and more people are becoming aware of it and getting involved in it, or starting to want to get it. So, as far as the reasoning, like I say, it could be a number of things.
Right on. Anybody want to add to that?
Well, yeah, I think I'd like to add just a little bit to that, is that I think the first thing that the Americans go for on a foreign comic, it's obviously a major cover. I don't think they'll just trawl and get any old foreign comic cover. It'll be something like Spidey 129, Tales of Suspense 39. If they see a foreign with that particular image, it's in their mindset, they'll home in on it. So I think it's all the big key books first, and then everything just trickles down after that. But it's always the big ones first.
But of course,
I'd agree.
You also have to be careful, though, because sometimes you may pick up a book that has that cover. That's not the story that's in that book.
Oh, indeed, yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, there's that. And also there is date of printing. So one of the things we noticed pretty early on, I think, was foreign books that were printed the closest to the American print date tend to be a little more valuable, in the sense that they're wanted more, in a way. So I'll give you an example. The first 129, Ken, speaking to your comment, the first foreign 129 we think was the Editions Heritage, and it actually came out before the Mexican Mac did. And so I think date of printing. So you could have, a key book that it has value. It's a foreign edition, but if it was printed really far away from when the American was printed, it better be a really rare book in order to hold some value. Sort of similar to the Finnish Mail Away 129. That was printed in like the early 90s, I think. But it is there was printed in such low numbers, it holds a lot of its value. So yeah, that's what I would add to that too, is it's about what people are looking for, and also how old it is and how close to the original American published date. And then, rarity, print run rarity, and supposed rarity would be another one.
Yeah, and since you mentioned that, I'll also add to that, for those of you who are new, who are listening to this podcast, because you're trying to find things out and get a better feel for what's going on with the foreign comics in the foreign marketplace. One of the things you have to be careful about and to get out of your head, because for years and years and years and years, you would hear people say this, oh, this is a German edition of something. And they'd be like, oh, that's just a German reprint. That's just a reprint. No. It's not a reprint. It's like, and you have to get it out of your head that some of these foreign editions, that they're reprints, because they're not reprints. There are foreign reprints, but the first time something is printed in Germany, for example, of a character, it might have been 10, 15, 20 years after the American one was printed. But it's a German edition, and it's considered a first printing of that book for that character with that issue in that country.
Absolutely.
It is a
Absolutely.
first print. It is not a reprint.
I mean,
Now, they
because
may have it.
Sing it, brother.
And they may have it later where, like, let's just say, for example, let's say a book came out in 1970, and then Germany came around, and a German publisher published it in 1980. Okay, well, that's the first print. That's not a reprint. That's a first print. However, that same publisher or another publisher down the line, maybe 15 years from there, reprinted that same thing again in Germany. Now, that might be considered a foreign reprint.
Exactly.
But those initial ones that come out, you got to understand, they are not reprints, guys. They are first prints.
Right.
German edition.
Yeah.
They're German edition. Yes.
Awesome. Let me explore that
First
a little
print
bit.
German edition.
Yep.
Yeah. So let me explore that a little bit. So now we're getting into like what I wanted to cover, which is a little bit of 101 stuff, right? So, to what you're explaining there, Stephen. So to use an example of that, like in Germany, there was a publisher called Hit Comics that ran Fantastic Four closer to the original dates. And then later there was a company called Williams that ran it again. It started with issue 1 after that. So you would consider that first Hit Comics the first print. Would you consider that Williams one a reprint?
It depends on what it is they're printing. If what they're printing is the same story that was printed in a previous one from the previous publisher, then yeah, that would probably be considered a foreign reprint or a German reprint.
Yeah, you've got. I think. Sorry for butting in, but I think you've got to think of it as if it's an exact clone of that issue, then it's a reprint. It's not a separate edition, is it? Because it's a clone.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and now we're getting into like that gray area, right? Yeah. Where there would be some within the hobby, I would think, that would consider it the Williams, the later version, because maybe it was translated differently. This is where we get into some weird shit too, because a reprint means it's pretty much exactly the same thing. Maybe the title changed a little bit, like the Marvel Tales and the Marvel Run, right? Mm-hmm. But even some of these foreigns, even if a different publisher did it 10 years later, like let's say a different German publisher did it 10 years later, they might have changed. The translation might have changed, or
that's true.
Some other elements that were massive might have changed. So there would be some people that would just consider it, the Williams Verlag,
edition. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that because we get into. Yeah, so it's that's a gray area.
Yeah, it might be the German edition, but it's from a different publisher, so it's considered that publisher edition rather than, German edition.
Yeah, because we're getting more into the book hobby, because the book hobby deals with this in that way too, right? You have soft cover, hard cover, all this different shit, and when a different publisher in a different country does, say, Mark Twain, but they use some really rare prints in it or something, it changes the whole scope. So it's almost like, in some ways, I've thought about this and thought we almost need to get reprint out of the foreign edition world. Like the classification, I almost feel like it needs to just go away. Reprint needs to go away.
I would be perfectly fine with that.
What do you guys think?
Oh, I totally agree with you, Matt. Yeah. No such thing as reprints, really.
Yeah, I mean,
because in our hobby, reprint has a negative connotation from the get-go.
Sure.
Right. Well, reprint might be. There's also the time. So if going back to my Fantastic Four in Germany example, right? So if one of the ones I collect is 52, the Black Panther, right? So the Hit Comics version of that has unique inking on it, whereas the Williams comic version of that has unique inking on it. So those are different in my view. Neither would be a reprint by my definition. It sounds like kind of yours as well. But if they compile that into a trade in like, the year 2010 or something, right? That would probably, I would classify that as a reprint, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I would agree with that totally.
And then there's even some stuff that's even beyond that. For example, I have an Italian edition of New Mutants #1. I'm a big New Mutants fan. And they actually printed the book. You can get an Italian New Mutants #1. But they also went back later and they took issue #1, 2, 3, and 4, and Man Thing issue 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they bound them all together and put them in one big edition that on the front has the New Mutants #1 cover. It's really thick because it's 8 comics inside of one. But if you look at it, you can see where it's like they took the covers off and literally just bound all the issues together and put them in this one book.
Right on.
And that's a whole
like the collected edition.
Yeah, it's like a whole different thing. It's kind of hard to really say what's like a bound edition.
This is what makes the foreign comics collecting hobby so special. There's so many curios and curiosities out there. They're so different.
Exactly, Ken. It's not black or white. There's a lot of gray in there.
So there is a bit of like defining how you want to collect.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's get into another aspect of that would be, and you guys already hinted on, is the covers versus stories, right? So, talk about that divide, Matt.
Well, that divide happened simply because the publishers decided they were going to do whatever the hell they wanted to do.
Yep.
They didn't give a shit if the covers matched the guts. For Americans, that matters to us. And so what you end up with, let's say you were building the Spider-Man 300 set, and you have Spider-Man 300s that don't use the cover. A good example would be the Portuguese Abril. They use like an interior panel or something on the cover. Yeah. Well, what is that? Is that a Portuguese 300? I would say yes, but another collector might say no, it's lacking the cover, right? And then in the instance of the Cabanas Hellas Marvel's Greeks, Cabanas Hellas, it was infamous for not matching interior guts to cover.
Yeah.
So what about the Iron Man 55 Cabanas Hellas Greek? Is that an Iron Man 55 edition? For me, I believe that it is, because it has the cover is very important, right? But another collector would say, no, it doesn't. It doesn't have the guts. You're a fool. So yeah, we're into that gray area, and the beauty of this niche is it's so new and everyone is still kind of finding their way. Is there are no defined parameters. We're making this shit up as we go, guys.
or we're finding it out as we go.
Yeah, or teasing it out, finding it out, debating it out. You name it, right?
I mean, you're so right about the Greek Cabanas Hellas stuff. I mean, all the Captain America stuff that I've got from that stable. Wow, it's so wacky. I mean, there's so many covers where they just take a panel, blow it up, use it on the front cover.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And also they got, they'll pick one cover, and then 4 or 5 months down the line, they've run out of things to do, so they'll use the same cover.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what have I done? Have I bought the wrong issue? No, the numbers are different. And then there's subtle changes on the top header. They'll put a different color up there.
Yeah, and also, like, for example, let's say you're after a particular story. You're after the first appearance of this character, or the first this of that character. And sometimes you can go to the foreign editions and you'll find the cover, and you'll be like, okay, that's that book. And most of the time, that story's in that book somewhere, maybe with other stories from other books. Once in a while, it may not. But what's really funny is, like, for example, and I'll give you an example of this. Actually, the very same show that I found that Romance Australian at, I also found a Batman issue. This was a couple of years ago. And I saw the issue and it drew my eye, because here's the other thing about this, guys, and you know this. There are some of these other countries, they get their own artists to do covers. They'll either do swipes of covers that are the American version. So it looks like the American version, but there's something different about it because it's a whole different piece of art done by a different artist. Or it's just an entirely, like this particular Batman issue it drew my eye. And the reason it drew my eye, because in the front cover, it had Batman punching out a clown.
You can't resist that. You can't pass that up. Right.
Which I can say I felt like doing sometimes. But hey, here it is. Here's Batman himself. He's literally socking it to a clown on the cover. And I was like, what is this? And I was like, I wasn't really sure. Maybe it was something bootleg. Maybe it was this. Maybe it was that. I wasn't really sure. But what really drew me was when I pulled it out to look at it, on the back, turns out it's a wraparound cover. And on the back of the cover, it's basically got this circus parade going on behind the two that are fighting on the front. And you can see some of the shocked looks of the people on the behind them, like going, oh my God, what's this person doing? But yeah, it's Batman punching out a clown. It's a really neat wraparound cover. And there's nothing to indicate this, because I'm just looking at this book. That's what drew me to the book. It's obviously not a cover that was ever done here in America. That's plain.
Mm-hmm.
That's plain to see. But it wasn't until I got home from that show and I started looking inside the book at what stories were in it, that all of a sudden it struck me what one of the two stories that were in this book were. The first Silver Age Two-Face appearance story is in this book. So it's got the first Silver Age appearance of Two-Face, which, if many of you know, has like Batman tied to the front of a ship, and the big,
to the front of the ship,
and the big ghost face of Two-Face, in the background. A lot of people know this. It's a key book. A lot of people go after that book. And there's nothing on this book that would give you any indication of that. And yet inside that book, there's the first appearance issue story of Two-Face. So if you're the person who's going after all those first appearances of Silver Age appearances of Two-Face, you want to find all of these. Most of the time, you'll just be after the covers. But if you're a real hardcore true completionist, that you want all the foreign editions of the first Silver Age appearance of Two-Face, this book would fall in that category, and nobody would know it unless you just knew it. I mean, my buddy Tim.
Stephen, can I ask you? I ask you, is it a Scandinavian book?
It is
that one of those Scandinavian?
It's Netherlands edition. Yep. It's from the publisher Williams Lecter.
Yeah, they did the Scandinavian countries had some artists that redid some Batman that are super neat. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I'll throw up a picture of this one on the Facebook page later as well for people to see. But
I'd love to see it.
I mean, I got it signed by Michael Golden because one of the issues that's in it is from Batman number 295, which Michael Golden did the artwork in. So I got Michael Golden to sign it. And then the other one, of course, is that first Silver Age Two-Face, which was written by Denny O'Neil. I got Denny O'Neil to sign the book as well. And I got it graded.
Nice.
It's if you want to know, it's Batman 133 Netherlands editions, published by Williams Lecter in 1981. And it was just one of those weird things where I was just going through. I was like, hey, this actually has a key story in it. And,
that's awesome.
And you wouldn't know it to look at the front. You'd have no idea.
Amazing.
Sweet.
You would have to know it. You can't collect what you don't know.
It's something you just have to know,
Exactly. That's why the network is so important in our hobby. You don't get shit unless you ask people, and people pitch in with what they know, and then you just build up the knowledge. It's like me and Matt have talked about this before. You can't be in our hobby a lone wolf. You can't. No. It can't be done. You have to make friends. You have to speak to others. Definitely,
And that's what kind of drew me also to this thing was our little section of the comic book world is more closely resembles, and I know I say this till I'm blue in the face, it more closely resembles the way it used to be in the 60s.
I agree, totally. Yeah.
Yep.
When you had to know people and you had to go to shows and you had to put yourself out there, there was no hiding in Mama's basement, comic collector. There was no time.
Google to go to get your instant information for what you need to know about something.
You had to have social skills, and for the longest time in our hobby, you don't need social skills. You only need money.
True.
Well, on our side of the pool, you got to have social skills, which is neat, I think.
Yeah, and that's because still, even today, with all the social media and Google and everything, all the knowledge that's out there, there is still an enormous amount of information about all this foreign stuff that nobody knows. And you can't just go on Google and type out this edition of this book and expect to get any significant amount of true information about what it is, when it was, why it was, where it was, what it's got. You don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, especially if you're doing it in English or the language of your birth.
Yeah.
You're not going to find it. So that makes it harder too.
Yep.
You got to know, I tell new guys all the time, I'm like, what book are you looking for? Oh, I'm looking for the Spider-Man 300. Do you know how to say it in Italian? Do you know how to say L'Uomo Ragno? I never thought to do it that way. Well, shit, brah.
Yeah.
You've got to figure out the what that title you're looking for and the number in its foreign language, and you got to save it in a text file.
So I tell you what,
because that's how you're going to do it.
Ken's handy tip number 1. Okay, say you're looking for something in a foreign language, and it's on eBay. You go to that country's eBay store, you find the listing that you want, and then you copy the item listing number, and then you go back to your country's eBay, ebay.com, or in my case, ebay.co.uk, and then you enter that number in the search tab. You press the enter button. Magically, it all appears in your language.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great
It's
tip.
a cracking tip, that is. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
All the new guys need to learn that stuff. Yep. And then, as you get into the more advanced stuff, there are literally online OCRs.
Oh, yeah.
So you can take a foreign book as long as you've got it, as long as it's a nice, clear example of it. And you can go onto websites and you can OCR that. It'll OCR foreign languages for you. So you can at least OCR that cover and hopefully be able to grab editable foreign text that you can then use to search. That's another trick.
Yeah. I mean, you can buy those OCR, optical character recognition tools. You can buy them like handheld little things. Fit the palm of your hand. Just scan that page.
Yeah, you can put it on your phone.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm gonna have to give you my 5-minute warning.
Yep.
We're getting close to an hour, but I promised my wife there's this craft fair that she wants me to go with her, and I promised her. So
Don't worry.
I'm 5 minutes. I'm 5 minutes out. No means I want you guys to stop, but I'm going to bounce.
We were aiming for an hour
To
anyway.
be fair,
Yep.
This is probably a perfect place to end our fantastic episode number 1.
Actually, let me do some closing stuff if you guys don't mind.
Cool.
So there's a little bit.
Go for it.
You can edit all that out, Ken. So I mean, this is awesome, and again, we're just scratching the surface. We didn't quite get into the full 101 stuff, but there's a lot of stuff to learn. There's a lot of define how you want to collect. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of countries. As we go forward, I want to start to profile publishers, countries. A billion topics that you guys even touched on. So I think it's foreign grading options, things like that. How important is condition if you're a collector, right? In Ken's case, buy it every time you see it. How important is impulse control, right?
Ken is. He's the enemy of your wife.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And your pocketbook.
How much did this copy cost? Then take away 2 decimal places.
That's right. And one of the questions I want to ask, and start thinking about this maybe for the next episode. What is the biggest mistake a new collector can make? So, we're talking about some tips and things like that. So put that in your thinking cap.
Well, I've got a half answer to that. Okay. The half answer is rusty staples or not rusty staples. Yeah. Okay. I'll leave you with that.
Okay, so let's get into that on the next one. So let's do some plugs. Let's close it out. So Ken, your website is kenworthing.com. Go check him out there. Right.
Perfect.
Matt, do you have anything that you want to plug?
I've been really hitting my Instagram hard lately. Define999 on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram, and I'm posting foreign books daily. There's something about it. The whole just photo, the image format, and I don't have to go write a whole bunch. I'm digging it. So right now, Instagram.
I heard it was Define 999. Is it Define 9?
Define 999. Define 999.
All right. And Steven, anything?
Hey,
I'm
working on a rap track right now.
Okay. Cool.
Well, I can't
believe it or not.
Can't wait to hear that.
It's going to be on foreign comics.
Oh, nice. Steven, anything you want to plug? Make mention of? I'm
on Instagram, Bagofleas, BAGOFLEAS. I'm also on Facebook, Stephen Bagley, but most of my comic stuff you'll see me posting about, or everything will be with my signature facilitation company, which is TGR Comics. And that's both on Facebook and on Instagram at TGR Comics.
Perfect.
Nice.
Perfect. And I think we should always close
Awesome.
with plugging a show. So you can find us thanks to Ken's brilliant work. You can find us on iTunes.
Yes.
You can find us on Breaker, I think it was. We record
Yep.
on Anchor. You can find us there. And
Spotify.
pretty much Spotify, right? Pretty much wherever you can find podcasts, you can find us.
Absolutely.
And I encourage you, if you do, if you appreciate what we're doing, please leave a rating or review. We don't get paid to do this. It kind of feeds our souls. So leave us a rating or review wherever you find us.
Yep.
Spread the word, tell your friends, and find us on Facebook as well. Florida Comics Calling Podcast. Go check us out. Say hi. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys.
This was fun, guys.
Perfect.
Any
Been
closing
great.
thoughts?
Closing thoughts.
Wait, say that again.
Any
Closing thoughts.
Yeah,
Okay.
any closing thoughts?
Let's spread this disease.
Can't top that.
I like that.
Thank you.
Spread the disease. Ken is a typhoid Mary. And I'd like to thank my friends. You guys rock. Eric, Steven, Ken, loving it. I'm really excited about this show. Can't wait to go forward. Keep hunting, guys.
Yep.
Cool.
Beautiful.